You know how important it is to have a good network, right? Like all your friends and family and colleagues. It's like they always say your network is your net worth.
Absolutely. It's all about who you know.
Well, get this. What if I told you that you could actually boost that social capital just by buying stuff?
Now, that's an interesting idea.
I know, right? It might sound a little crazy, but that's what we're diving into today.
I'm intrigued. Let's hear it.
So, this deep dive is based on some seriously cool academic research.
Always love a good research paper.
Right. This one is called Can't Buy Me Love, or Can I? Social Capital Attainment Through Conspicuous Consumption in Virtual Environments.
Catchy title.
It is. And it was published by Informs.
They're like a big deal professional society, all about data and research and all that good stuff.
Exactly. So these researchers, they wanted to see if there's a connection between what we buy and how many friends we have.
Makes you think about all those times we splurge on something maybe a little more expensive than we need.
Exactly. Like, is there some hidden social benefit to those impulse buys?
Well, to figure that out, they decided to study a virtual world called Habbo.
Habbo!
Yeah, it's super popular, especially with teens and young adults. Imagine like The Sims, but focused on hanging out and making friends online.
Okay, I can see that. So you create your little avatar, decorate your room, and chat with people.
Exactly. And here's the key. Yeah. In Habbo, you can buy furniture to decorate your virtual room.
So the researchers use this to their advantage.
Exactly. They basically created a controlled experiment within the game.
Clever.
They introduced a new line of like super stylish, limited edition kitchen furniture.
So like the virtual equivalent of a designer handbag or something.
It's something that's not essential, but definitely makes a statement.
So like virtual conspicuous consumption.
You got it.
Yeah.
And they tracked what happened next. They watched to see if the players who bought this fancy furniture made more friends compared to those who just bought regular stuff.
So what happened? Did those virtual interior design choices actually make a difference?
You better believe it. The players who snagged that prestige furniture, their friend counts went way up. Yep. On average, they made like 9 or 10 more friends than those who didn't buy it.
Whoa, that's a huge difference.
It is. Now, you might be thinking, well, maybe the popular players were just more likely to buy the cool stuff in the first place.
Right. Like maybe it wasn't the furniture itself, but just that those players were already outgoing.
That's a great point. And the researchers thought about that too.
Yeah.
They were very careful to compare players who were similar in terms of how long they'd been playing, how old they were, how many friends they started with,
Yeah.
to make it a fair comparison.
So it's like they controlled for all those other factors to make sure it was actually the furniture making the difference.
Exactly. They wanted to isolate the impact of that purchase itself.
Smart. And even with all those controls in place, the pattern still held true.
Buying those virtual status symbols, it still led to more new friends.
Okay, so we've got one study that suggests a link, but did the researchers stop there?
Oh, they were just getting started.
Yeah.
They wanted to be extra sure about this connection, so they dug even deeper with something called a within-subject analysis.
Within subject analysis, what's that all about?
So instead of comparing different groups of players, they focused on individual players over time.
Like looking at their social life before and after they bought a prestige item.
You got it. It's like taking a before and after snapshot of their social world.
Okay, I'm following. So what did this closer look reveal? Did those virtual interior design choices really make a difference in the long run? Welcome back. So we've been talking about how buying fancy furniture in that virtual world, Habbo led to more friends for those players.
Yeah, it's a strange idea. But the research really shows that connection between spending on those kind of showy items and having more social connections.
At least in the game, right? But the big question is, does this translate to real life? Like, does splurging on a luxury car or designer bag actually lead to a richer social life out here in the real world?
That is the question, isn't it? It makes you think.
It does, because real life is obviously way more complicated than a virtual world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But there's some interesting parallels.
Right? Like we've all seen it happen. Someone shows up with a fancy new watch or the latest gadget, and suddenly everyone wants to talk to them.
Oh, yeah. There's definitely a psychological component at play there.
Like what?
Well, conspicuous consumption, like that watch or gadget, it creates a sort of halo effect. We subconsciously start associating those expensive items with positive qualities.
Like success and confidence. Maybe even attractiveness.
Exactly. And that can make someone seem more interesting or desirable as a friend or partner even.
So it's not just about keeping up with the Joneses, it's about maybe attracting them.
Uh-huh. In a way, yes.
Yeah.
It could be a subtle form of social signaling. By showing we can afford these luxury goods, we're kind of broadcasting our resources and potential value to others.
Almost like peacocking, but with money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, it goes all the way back to our evolutionary roots.
How so?
Well, think about it. Throughout history, those who could gather resources and provide for others, they were seen as more desirable mates.
So those urges we feel to buy the latest iPhone or that expensive dress could be driven by instincts we're not even aware of.
It's a fascinating theory, isn't it? Of course, it's not just about evolution. We live in a consumer society where material things are often linked to status and success.
And then there's social media. Everyone's curating their online image, showing off their latest purchases and experiences, trying to get those likes and followers.
Absolutely. Social media is like a stage for conspicuous consumption. It's all about online validation, which has become a kind of social currency.
So going back to those virtual gaming studies, could it be that those virtual worlds are actually mirroring real-world social dynamics?
It's very possible. Those games might be giving us a glimpse into the psychological and social forces that shape our behavior in the real world.
It's kind of unsettling to think our social lives might be influenced by these subtle unconscious factors.
It is. But it's important to remember everyone's different personalities, social circles, and even the specific items all play a role.
Right. Not everyone cares about status symbols.
Yeah.
And what's considered conspicuous in one group might be totally normal in another.
Exactly. The key is to be mindful of our own motivations. Why are we buying this thing? Do we genuinely value it, or are we influenced by the potential social rewards?
Like, are we chasing external validation instead of real connection?
That's the question, isn't it? It's something to think about, especially in a world where we're constantly bombarded with messages about what to buy and how to live.
It's all about finding that balance between indulging our desires and building genuine relationships.
Because at the end of the day, true social capital isn't about the number of friends we have or the things we own.
It's about the quality of those connections and the support and fulfillment they bring to our lives.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the final part of our deep dive, where we'll explore some practical ways to build authentic social capital in the real world.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into social capital.
Where we get practical.
Exactly. We've been exploring this idea that what we buy might actually influence our social lives, maybe even boost our social capital.
We saw those connections in the virtual world, then jumped to the real world, asking if the same things are happening in our everyday lives.
And now we're going to unpack social capital itself and look at ways to build those meaningful connections.
Because social capital is truly the foundation of a fulfilling life.
Okay, so first things first. What exactly is social capital? Why should we even care about it?
It's a term we hear a lot, but basically social capital is all about the value we get from our relationships.
Like the benefits of having a good network?
Exactly. Think of it as the resources and support we can access through our network of friends, family, colleagues, even just acquaintances.
So it's like having people you can count on when you need help.
That's part of it. But it's more than just practical support. Social capital can also provide emotional support information, new opportunities, even a sense of belonging.
So it's not about how many Facebook friends you have. It's about the quality of those relationships.
You got it. And that's what makes it so interesting, because real social capital, the kind that brings lasting fulfillment, you can't just buy that with a fancy car or a designer bag.
Right. We talked about how showing off those status symbols might get you some attention, but it doesn't automatically mean you'll have deeper connections with people.
Exactly. Building real social capital takes time, effort, and a willingness to be open and authentic with others.
So it's more about nurturing relationships than accumulating possessions.
Absolutely. It's about being there for people, being present and engaged, offering support without expecting anything in return.
It makes sense. But in today's world, it's easy to get caught up comparing ourselves to others and feeling like we don't measure up.
I hear you, especially with social media constantly showing everyone's highlight reel.
So how can we break free from that comparison trap and focus on building those genuine, fulfilling connections? What can we actually do?
This is where it gets empowering. It starts with being intentional about the relationships you want to grow. Make time for face-to-face interactions, even if it's just a phone call or a video chat. Put those devices down and truly connect.
And I bet shared experiences are important too.
Absolutely. Volunteering together, going to a concert, even just sharing a meal. Those moments create bonds and memories that really deepen connections.
And let's not forget about listening.
So important. Active listening shows you care about what the other person has to say. It's about being present in the conversation, not just waiting for your turn to talk.
So being a good friend, partner, colleague, it's about giving as much as you get.
That's the key. And here's the beautiful thing. The more we invest in those genuine connections, the more social capital we build. It's a win-win.
What about those of us who are more introverted? Do we have to become extroverts to build social capital?
Not at all. Introverts can have just as much success. It's about finding your own way to connect. Maybe joining a book club, attending a workshop, even just starting a conversation with someone who shares your interests.
So quality over quantity, right? A few close friends can be more valuable than a huge network of acquaintances.
Exactly. And remember, building social capital is a journey. It's about showing up, consistently being present, and nurturing those connections.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I think the big takeaway is that true social capital isn't something we buy, it's something we build.
A journey of connection, support, and authenticity.
And while material possessions might give us a temporary boost, they can't replace the satisfaction that comes from real human connection.
Well said. So go out there and invest in your social capital, one authentic interaction at a time.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We'll see you next time. Stay curious.